the echo of an oath. A whisper of crusades, of distant lands, of unwavering faith and profound secrets. For centuries, the name of the Knights Templar has become a legend, an amalgamation of history and myth that defies comprehension. Were they guardians of the faith or custodians of a power beyond imagination? Heroes of Christendom or heretics consumed by greed? To understand them, we must journey to the heart of their legend, to a time of swords and miracles, of faith and betrayal. For the men of the 12th century, the idea of a warrior who was also a monk was a paradox. The monk retreated from the world, the warrior conquered it. Yet, in a world besieged by violence and fanaticism, the Catholic Church needed new arms, new swords, to protect its interests in the Holy Lands. The First Crusade had secured Jerusalem, but the path of pilgrims remained a road of blood and death. The year 1119 marked the beginning of something new. 9 knights, led by a French nobleman named Hugh de Payens, presented themselves to King Baldwin II of Jerusalem with a daring proposal. Their oath was simple and at the same time revolutionary. They pledged to protect pilgrims on the roads of the Holy Land. They asked for no riches, no titles. Only a place to live. King Baldwin, impressed by their humility and fervor, granted them a wing of the palace, a wing that stood over the ruins of the ancient Temple of Solomon. And so, the Order of the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and the Temple of Solomon, later known as the Knights Templar, was born. Poor? In their early days, their poverty was real and visible. The image of the 2 knights on a single horse became their symbol, a reminder of their oath of humility. But this humility hid a greater ambition, a devotion that transcended battles. The Temple of Solomon, more than just a refuge, was their spiritual cradle. For them, it wasn't just a building. It was the place where the history of their faith intertwined with mystery. What were they seeking in those ruins? Historians speak of a simple place of residence. The legends whisper of something deeper. The search for biblical artifacts, for hidden knowledge, for the very foundations of faith. For almost a decade, the Templars remained in the shadows. Their numbers did not grow, their fame was local. But within the temple, something changed. Historians cannot explain it, but the transformation of the order is undeniable. Humility gave way to strength, poverty to wealth. Faith became a political and military force that would dominate the known world. What secret did they find in the depths of that temple that allowed a handful of knights to become the most powerful army of their time? The answer lies in a man who carried not a sword but a quill. Bernard of Clairvaux, one of the most influential figures of the 12th century, saw in the Templars not just an army, but a living example of true faith. For him, the Templars were the warriors of Christ. In 1129 at the Council of Troyes, Saint Bernard helped formalize the order. He created a rule, a guide to life that defined every aspect of their existence, from their prayers to the color of their cloaks. They were granted papal protection, which placed them above any monarch. The white cloak with the red cross became the symbol of their power and their promise of purity. And so, the Templar order took off. From 9 men they grew to hundreds, then thousands. Their oath of poverty, in a paradoxical twist, catapulted them to incalculable wealth. People from all over Europe donated land, money and property to finance the cause of the Holy Land. They became a network of influence, the first international bankers, with fortresses in every corner of the continent. The power they had found in the temple now manifested in every coin they touched, in every castle they built. But this power, this wealth had a dark side. The oath of devotion was transformed into a magnet for envy and greed. The same power that elevated them to the heights would make them fall into the depths of legend. The echo of an oath. An oath that began in humility and ended in the greatest of tragedies. To understand their fall, we must first understand their rise. And for that, we must delve into the secrets they guarded and the legends they themselves forged. The oath of poverty, a sacred promise made in the Jerusalem desert, would become the foundation of a financial empire that spanned a continent. The Knights Templar, the poor fellow soldiers of Christ, had arrived in the Holy Land with empty packs, but their faith and discipline resonated with the ears of Europe. For nobles, princes, and even kings, the opportunity to support a cause as noble as the protection of pilgrims was undeniable. Donations began as a trickle but soon became a torrent. Lands, castles, vast stretches of vineyards, and farms were bequeathed to the order. As their spiritual and military power grew, their material wealth skyrocketed. Not through greed but through the faith of millions. But the genius of the Templars was not just in accepting donations. The true engine of their ascent was an innovation that transformed commerce, travel, and warfare forever. The Templars became Europe's first bankers. At a time when traveling with large sums of money was a deadly risk, plagued by bandits and thieves, the order offered a revolutionary solution. A pilgrim heading to Jerusalem could deposit their wealth at a temple in London, Paris, or any other city. The Templar would issue a letter of credit, a precursor to traveler's checks, which the pilgrim could then redeem for their money at the temple in Jerusalem. This service not only guaranteed security but was also a lucrative business. For a small fee, the Templars became the custodians of vast fortunes, establishing a network of trust that stretched from the snows of Scotland to the desert sun of Acre. This network of temples became more than just exchange points. They were impregnable fortresses, vaults that guarded the treasures of European monarchies. Kings like Henry II of England entrusted their wealth to the order, knowing that no enemy army could penetrate their walls. Philip IV of France, the future executioner of the order, even used the Temple of Paris as his own royal treasury. The Templars didn't just manage money, they also lent it. They were the bankers of kings, financing wars, lending money for the ransom of prisoners, and organizing the funding of new crusades. Their wealth became so legendary that the phrase "rich as a Templar" became common in medieval Europe. But how did they maintain such a vast and complex system? The answer lies in their own structure. The order was a militarized brotherhood, with a strict hierarchy that ensured the flow of information and treasure. Unlike modern banks, the Templars were not a for-profit enterprise. They were a brotherhood of monk warriors who operated under an oath of obedience and discipline. Their knowledge of logistics and their vast network of castles and commanderies across Europe gave them an unprecedented advantage. They didn't just guard money, they moved it. Templar convoys, guarded by knights in their imposing white cloaks, transported treasure along the continent's most dangerous routes, ensuring that money got where it was needed. The Templars' financial power gave them immense political sway. They had the ability to influence the decisions of kings and popes. They could finance a crusade or refuse to, which gave them a say in the destiny of entire kingdoms. But this power did not come without a price. The wealth, which was once the result of faith and trust, became a source of envy and suspicion. Rumors began to circulate, of secret rituals, of an uncontrollable power, of a wealth that could not have been acquired legitimately. To their enemies, the Templars' wealth was not a blessing but a testament to their heresy. Thus, the very network that guaranteed the safety of the pilgrim and the king's treasure became a threat. The vast financial empire they had built with faith and discipline would be the very reason for their downfall. The gold that made them powerful also made them vulnerable. The accusations of heresy, the secret rituals, and the supposed crimes against the church were often just a veil covering the true ambition of their enemies, the immense fortune the Templars guarded. The echo of the Templars' wealth, a wealth built on trust, would resonate through time, but its luster would soon be overshadowed by the shadow of betrayal. The banker of the cross, once a force for good, would become the scapegoat for ambition and greed. In the grand tapestry of medieval warfare, the Knights Templar carved their legend not just as bankers, but as the fiercest warriors of their age. The oath that bound them, a spiritual discipline as rigid as their armor, forged an army unlike any other. They were the shock troops of the Crusades, the vanguard in every assault, the last line of defense in every retreat. Their battle cry, "Non nobis Domini non nobis sed nomini tua de gloriam," not unto us, O Lord, not unto us but unto thy name give glory, was not just a prayer but a statement of their purpose. They fought not for conquest or glory but for God. Their military might was a direct result of their strict martial code. A Templar knight was an elite fighter, trained from a young age in the art of war. They lived a life of austerity and discipline, abstaining from earthly pleasures and focusing their entire being on the holy war. Their armor was a symbol of their faith, heavy chainmail, a white surcoat emblazoned with the Red Cross, and a distinct white mantle, which made them instantly recognizable on the battlefield. This simple uniform was a powerful psychological tool, a visible promise of their unwavering resolve. For the Saracens, the sight of the Templar cavalry charging was the harbinger of a devastating, unstoppable force. The Templars' military prowess was most vividly displayed in the grand-scale battles of the Holy Land. At the Battle of Montcassard in 1177, a small force of Templars, alongside a young King Baldwin IV of Jerusalem, faced the overwhelming army of Saladin. The odds were against them, but the Templar charge was legendary in its ferocity. They broke Saladin's line, forcing the great Sultan to flee and securing one of the most stunning victories of the Crusades. This triumph cemented their reputation as an unyielding force, the shield of Christendom in the East. However, their courage could sometimes border on recklessness, a fatal flaw in a brutal war of attrition. At the Battle of Hattin in 1187, The Templars, overconfident and perhaps blinded by their zeal, played a decisive role in the most catastrophic defeat in Crusader history. The entire Crusader army was annihilated, and the true cross, their most sacred relic, was lost to Saladin. The Grand Master of the Templars and many of his knights were captured and executed. The disaster at Hattin shattered the myth of Templar invincibility and led directly to the loss of Jerusalem. It was a grim lesson that faith alone could not win a war against a cunning and disciplined foe. Yet even in defeat, the Templars' resilience was extraordinary. They quickly rebuilt, establishing new strongholds and continuing to fight with the same ferocity. Their military engineering was as advanced as their battlefield tactics. They built some of the most formidable castles in the Levant, like Chateau Pellerin and Tortosa, which were masterpieces of military architecture, designed to withstand the longest sieges. These fortresses were not just garrisons, they were operational hubs, symbols of Crusader permanence in a hostile land. They were a testament to the Templars' strategic foresight and their commitment to defending the holy sites. The Templars also introduced a new form of warfare, the use of a military reserve. They understood the psychological and tactical advantage of keeping a fresh, highly trained force waiting to be deployed at a critical moment. This tactic, simple yet effective, allowed them to turn the tide of battle when their enemies were at their most exhausted. Their discipline was absolute. No knight was allowed to leave the field of battle unless the Templar flag was lowered, a rule that ensured they fought to the last man. This unwavering resolve was their greatest weapon, but also their Achilles heel. It was a commitment that would one day be used against them. As their influence grew, so did the fear and respect they commanded. They were not just soldiers but a state within a state, accountable only to the Pope. This unique status, combined with their unmatched wealth and military might, made them both a protector and a threat. They were the champions of the faith, but their power was so immense that it began to overshadow the very monarchs they were sworn to serve. The Templars' legacy is etched in the bloody sands of the Holy Land. They were the sword and the shield of the Crusades, a force of nature driven by a divine purpose. Their prowess on the battlefield was a sight to behold, a thunderous charge that struck fear into the hearts of their enemies. But in their unwavering faith, and their ultimate commitment to victory at any cost, lay the seeds of their own destruction. For as the Crusades waned, the purpose of their immense power would be questioned, and the swords they wielded so expertly would eventually turn against them. In the shadows of their military and financial might, a different legend swirled around the Templars, one of secrets and relics. For centuries, the order has been inextricably linked to the greatest myth of the medieval world, the Holy Grail. While their public mission was to defend the pilgrim routes, whispers persisted of a deeper, more sacred purpose, a quest not for earthly treasures but for a divine artifact. The Grail legend, a tapestry of myth woven by poets and bards, reached its peak in the same era the Templars were at their most powerful. Troubadours like Crétin de Troyes and Wolfram von Eschenbach wrote epic poems about knights on a spiritual quest for a mysterious object, a cup or a stone with miraculous powers. It was no coincidence that these stories often featured a brotherhood of knight monks sworn to protect this very relic. In the legends, these knights were the custodians of the Grail Castle, a hidden fortress where the sacred vessel was kept safe. The similarities between this mythical brotherhood and the real-life Templars were too striking to ignore. But what was the Holy Grail? In its earliest forms it wasn't a cup. The word graal may have come from the Latin graedalus, a dish or platter. Over time, it evolved into the cup used by Jesus at the Last Supper and later, the vessel that caught his blood at the crucifixion. This transformation of the Grail from a platter to a cup coincided precisely with the Templars' rise to power. The theory emerged: the Templars, in their excavations beneath the ruins of the Temple of Solomon, had not found wealth, but the Holy Grail itself. This would explain their sudden, explosive transformation from a small band of poor knights to a force of immense power and influence. They weren't just protecting pilgrims, they were protecting the most sacred object in all of Christendom. The legend of the Grail provided a powerful narrative for the Templars' mission. It elevated their purpose beyond mere military action and gave it a mystical dimension. If they were the guardians of the Grail, their wealth and papal protection were not just privileges, but divinely ordained necessities. It gave their crusade a deeper spiritual meaning and made them untouchable in the eyes of many. For some, the Templar cross was not just a symbol of the Crusades, but a key to an ancient, hidden truth. Yet, the legends are more than just stories. They hint at a secret knowledge the Templars may have possessed. The Grail was said to hold not just a divine presence, but also the keys to a forgotten wisdom. Some theorists believe the Templars discovered ancient scrolls or texts that revealed a different, more personal version of Christianity, one that would have been heretical to the established church. This secret knowledge, if it existed, would explain the accusations of heresy leveled against them during their downfall, charges that included Gnostic beliefs and the veneration of a mysterious idol. The link between the Templars and the Grail is a source of endless fascination, bridging the gap between historical fact and a world of mystery. It connects them not just to the Christian tradition but to older, pre-Christian beliefs. The Templar cross, similar to those found in Celtic traditions, and their supposed connection to the Knights of the Round Table, have fueled the idea that they were the inheritors of a forgotten lineage, guardians of a secret passed down through generations. Whether they ever held the Holy Grail remains one of history's most tantalizing mysteries. But the enduring power of the legend speaks volumes. The myth of the Templars as Grail guardians turned them into more than just soldiers and bankers. It transformed them into the ultimate questing knights, forever linked to a sacred object and a hidden truth. Their history, both real and imagined, became a journey not just to Jerusalem, but into the very heart of faith, myth, and the enduring power of a secret. Beyond the public image of pious knights and shrewd bankers lay a deeper, more shrouded reality, a world of secret rituals and hidden initiations. While the Templars were outwardly a monastic order, their secretive nature and the suddenness of their immense power fueled whispers of occult practices. The accusations that would one day lead to their downfall didn't appear from thin air. They were born from a fear of what went on behind the closed doors of their commanderies. The process of becoming a Templar was deliberately mysterious. The initiation ceremony, or reception, took place at night in a secluded chapel with only a few select brothers in attendance. The rituals were so closely guarded that those who revealed them faced a life sentence of imprisonment. The candidate, or postulant, was required to swear a vow of absolute secrecy, promising never to reveal what transpired. This level of secrecy, while common in military orders, became a source of suspicion. Why the darkness, the isolation, the unbreakable oath? The most damaging accusations leveled against the order centered on these secret rites. During the trials of 1307, under torture, many Templars confessed to a series of shocking heresies. They spoke of a ritual where they were forced to deny Christ and spit on the cross. They confessed to the worship of a strange, bearded idol known as Baphomet. They admitted to kissing the posterior of the Grand Master as a sign of obedience and to engaging in homosexual acts. These confessions, while almost certainly extracted under duress and likely fabricated by their persecutors, tapped into the deepest fears of medieval society. But what was the truth behind the accusations? Historians and scholars have debated this for centuries. The denial of Christ, for instance, may have been a form of mock betrayal, a reenactment of Peter's denial of Jesus, designed to test the candidate's faith and loyalty under extreme duress. It was a symbolic ritual, not a genuine act of apostasy. The accusations of Baphomet worship are even more perplexing. No evidence of such an idol has ever been found in Templar archives. It is possible that the name Baphomet was a deliberate corruption of Muhammad, a way to tie the order to the enemy they fought in the Holy Land. The word may also have been a cipher for something else entirely, a secret name for a spiritual concept or even a misinterpretation of a rite. The homosexual acts, a heinous crime in the eyes of the Church, may have been an invention to justify the charges. However, some scholars suggest that the accusations, born of torture, might have been twisted accounts of a fraternal kiss of peace, a common practice in many medieval orders. The nocturnal setting of the ceremony and the isolation were simply practical measures for a military brotherhood that needed to maintain discipline and loyalty. The secrecy of the Templars was not just for spiritual reasons. It was a matter of survival. They were a military organization operating in a hostile world, and their rituals, their codes, and their plans had to be kept from enemies, spies, and rivals. But in the end, the very secrecy that protected them from the battlefield became the weapon used to destroy them in the courtroom. The mystique of their private world was twisted into a dark narrative of heresy and blasphemy. The trial of the Templars stripped the order of its external glory, its wealth, its lands, its castles. But it left its greatest secret intact, the truth behind their rituals. The charges of heresy, whether true or false, forever embedded in history the idea that the Templars were more than they seemed. They became the ultimate purveyors of a hidden truth, a secret that survived the fires of the Inquisition and continues to fascinate us today. The whispers of the secret rites are the echoes of a mystery that may never be fully solved. For nearly 2 centuries, the Templars' purpose was crystal clear: to fight and die for the Holy Land. Jerusalem, the spiritual heart of Christendom, was both their reason for being and the source of their power. But as the 13th century dawned, the tide of the Crusades began to turn, and with it, the Templars' destiny. The loss of their primary mission would set in motion a chain of events that would ultimately lead to their demise. The turning point was not a single battle, but a slow, grinding decline. After the disaster at Hattin in 1187, the Crusaders lost their grip on Jerusalem, and while subsequent crusades attempted to recapture the city, they were never fully successful. The Templars, along with the Hospitallers and other military orders, became the last bulwarks of a fading dream. They were a powerful presence in a world where their purpose was becoming obsolete. The Templars fought with their characteristic ferocity to defend the last Crusader strongholds. The siege of Acre in 1291 was the final brutal chapter of their story in the Levant. Acre was the last major Crusader city, a bustling port and the final refuge for the Christian presence in the east. The Mamluk Sultanate, led by a formidable army, laid siege to the city with overwhelming force. The Templars, under the command of Grand Master Guillaume de Beaujeu, fought with suicidal bravery, holding the city walls against wave after wave of attackers. The battle for Acre was a testament to the Templars' unwavering commitment. When the walls were breached, they were the last to retreat, defending the final bastion of the city, the Templar House, until the very end. The Grand Master himself was killed, and the remaining knights fought to the death, their banners falling one by one. The final Templar resistance in Acre was not a victory, but a powerful, tragic stand that sealed the fate of the Crusader states. The fall of Acre was more than a military defeat, it was a psychological and political catastrophe. With the Holy Land lost, the Templars' primary reason for existence vanished. They were a military order without a war, an army without a battlefield. Their vast wealth, their immense power, and their unique status as a state within a state began to look suspicious to the monarchs of Europe. Without a holy cause to justify it, their power became a threat. The Templars retreated from the Levant, but their wealth and influence remained. They relocated their headquarters to Cyprus, but their true power base was in their commanderies and vaults scattered across Europe. They were no longer the champions of the faith but a powerful, secretive organization with immense resources and no clear purpose. This was a dangerous position to be in. The rulers of Europe, particularly King Philip IV of France, were deeply in debt to the Templars and viewed their vast wealth with envious eyes. The order's papal protection, once an asset, now made them a sovereign entity that a king could not easily touch. For Philip, a man known for his ruthless ambition, the Templars' existence was an unbearable affront to his authority. They were a state, a bank, and a powerful army operating within his borders, yet beyond his control. The vacuum left by the fall of Acre created the perfect opportunity for their enemies. The Templars, who had been untouchable for so long, suddenly had no legitimate purpose. Their vast wealth and their secretive nature, once symbols of their divine mission, were now viewed as evidence of a sinister conspiracy. The stage was set for the most dramatic and brutal downfall in medieval history. The Templars, who had survived countless battles against the Saracens, would now face a more cunning and treacherous foe, the very monarchs they had once protected. In the grand theater of medieval Europe, where power was a constant dance between kings and the church, the Templars' fall was not an accident but a meticulously planned checkmate. Their executioner was not a Saracen sultan, but a monarch known as Philip IV of France, a man whose ambition was as sharp as his nickname, the Fair, was ironic. He was a king consumed by two insatiable appetites, money and power. And the Templars, with their immense wealth and their sovereignty, were the perfect target. Philip IV's motivation was simple. He was in desperate need of funds to finance his wars and solidify his control over France. He had already plundered the assets of the Jews and the Lombard bankers, but their wealth paled in comparison to the legendary Templar treasury. The order, with its vast network of commanderies, was a nation-state within his borders, accountable only to the Pope. It was a challenge to his authority, a powerful rival that he could not abide. Philip was a modern king with a medieval problem. He needed to destroy the Templars to consolidate his power and seize their wealth. But how to strike at an organization protected by the Pope himself? Philip was a master of political maneuvering. He didn't just attack the Templars, he built a case against them, using the very tools of the Church to do it. The strategy was to dismantle their moral authority before dismantling their physical presence. The first step was to plant the seeds of suspicion. Rumors, born from envy and fear, began to circulate, whispers of secret rituals and heresies. Philip's agents, acting as informers, fed these rumors and twisted them into a coherent, if fantastical, narrative. The accusations were a calculated blend of the plausible and the preposterous. The Templars, who had once been the champions of the faith, were now said to be its gravest enemies. They were accused of denying Christ, spitting on the cross, and worshipping a strange idol. These were not random accusations. They were specifically chosen to shock the medieval mind and turn public opinion against the order. They were designed to justify a brutal and unprecedented act. The final piece of Philip's gambit was to secure the cooperation of the Pope. The reigning pontiff, Clement V, was a Frenchman and a former ally of Philip, but he was also the supreme protector of the Templars. Philip's threats and his promises of a grand inquest into the Templars' alleged heresies eventually wore down the Pope's resolve. Clement V, a weak and indecisive man, found himself caught between his sacred duty and the will of a ruthless king. Philip's relentless pressure, combined with the fabricated evidence and the threat of a schism, forced the Pope into a difficult position. Philip's plan was meticulously executed. He didn't send a simple army. He deployed a coordinated network of royal officials, spies, and informants. The king's men were everywhere, waiting for the signal. The stage was set for a move that would shock Europe and forever change the history of the Crusades. The Templars, who had survived countless battles and political intrigues, were about to face a new kind of enemy, one who fought not with a sword, but with deceit, propaganda, and a king's absolute authority. The trap was sprung not on the battlefield, but in the dead of night, in the heart of Europe. The king's gambit was a masterpiece of political treachery, a testament to how power, when unconstrained, can turn even the holiest of missions into a crime. The Templars had been a force of nature, but Philip was a king and his word was law. The night of October 13, 1307, was meant to be an ordinary Friday, a quiet end to a long week. But in the annals of history, it would forever be etched as the day a legendary order fell. This was not a battle, but a meticulously coordinated strike, a lightning-fast operation orchestrated by King Philip IV and his ruthless chancellor, Guillaume de Nogaret. The stage had been set, the accusations whispered, and the Pope's reluctant permission secured. The king's patience had run out. The signal was sent simultaneously across the length and breadth of France. The royal agents, armed with sealed letters from the king, converged on Templar commanderies and castles. The element of surprise was absolute. The Templars, a powerful military force, were caught completely unprepared. They were not at war, they were at peace, living their monastic lives in their homes. At dawn, the doors of every Templar house in France were breached, and the knights, often still in their beds, were taken captive. The sealed letters, which were not to be opened until the moment of the arrests, contained a single terrifying order: to arrest every Templar, no matter their rank, and to seize all their assets. The charge was not a simple crime, but the gravest offense imaginable: heresy. The letter, a masterful piece of propaganda, listed a litany of shocking accusations: spitting on the cross, denying Christ, worshipping an idol, and engaging in unnatural acts. The Templars were no longer seen as heroic defenders of the faith but as a secret sect of heretics. The charges were designed to turn public opinion against them and to justify an action that was otherwise illegal and immoral. The arrests were swift and brutal. The knights, who had fought valiantly against overwhelming odds in the Holy Land, offered little resistance. They were stunned, bewildered by the suddenness of the attack and the nature of the accusations. They had spent their lives in service to the Church, and now the Church, through the king's agents, was accusing them of the most heinous crimes. The arrests were a testament to the Templars' discipline and their utter shock. They had no idea a conspiracy of this scale could ever be mounted against them. Among the captives was the Grand Master himself, Jacques de Molay. A venerable figure, a hero of the Crusades, de Molay was taken from the temple in Paris, the very fortress that held the royal treasury. His arrest was a powerful symbol. The head of a sovereign order, once untouchable, was now a prisoner of a king. The Templars' immense wealth, their libraries, their records, their lands, their castles, everything was seized by the crown. The arrests of Friday the 13th, 1307, were more than a single event. They were the beginning of a prolonged and horrific campaign of torture and persecution. The king's agents, armed with a papal bull authorizing the arrests, but without the Pope's full consent for the methods, began a series of interrogations that would define the rest of the Templars' story. The goal was not to find the truth, but to force confessions that would justify the king's actions. The Templars, who had once been the most powerful and feared military order in the world, were now a broken and helpless group of men. The date itself, Friday the 13th, would forever be associated with bad luck and ill fortune. But the true tragedy was not in the superstition, but in the brutal reality of an innocent organization being destroyed by the unchecked power of a ruthless monarch. The Templars had survived the siege of Acre, the heat of the desert, and the swords of the Saracens, but they could not survive the cold, calculated ambition of a king. The arrests of Friday the 13th were only the first act of the Templars' tragedy. The second, and most brutal, was the forced extraction of confessions. King Philip IV's goal was not to discover the truth, but to manufacture a truth that would justify his actions. The methods he employed were medieval in their cruelty and modern in their psychological cunning. He needed confessions and he would stop at nothing to get them. The Templars were a brotherhood of hardened warriors, men who had faced death on countless battlefields. But they were not prepared for the systematic, prolonged horror of the Inquisition. The king's inquisitors, often Dominican friars, were armed with the papal bull that authorized the arrests, but they were also given a free hand by Philip to use whatever means necessary. The most common form of torture was the strappado, where the victim was bound by their wrists and hoisted into the air, dislocating their shoulders and causing unimaginable pain. Other methods included the fire and water torture, where the victim's feet were slowly roasted over a fire or their stomach was filled with water until it burst. Under this duress, the confessions came. Men who had sworn loyalty to the cross for their entire lives were forced to confess to the most heinous crimes against it. They admitted to spitting on the cross, a ritual meant to symbolize their denial of Christ. They confessed to worshipping a strange, bearded idol named Baphomet, a name that was almost certainly a creation of the inquisitors themselves. They revealed secret rituals of sodomy and blasphemy. The confessions, repeated almost verbatim across different Templar houses, were a clear sign of their fabrication. Yet, despite the use of torture, not all Templars broke. Many, including Grand Master Jacques de Molay, initially held firm, denying all charges. When de Molay, a man in his 60s, was first interrogated, he maintained his and the order's innocence. It was only after a prolonged period of brutal torture that he too confessed to the charges, a confession he would later recant. This pattern, confession under torture followed by a recantation when the pain ceased, was a common feature of the Templar trials. The confessions were not the words of heretics, but the screams of men in agony. The French Inquisition, under the king's thumb, was a well-oiled machine of propaganda. The confessions, no matter how unbelievable or obviously coerced, were immediately circulated and presented as definitive proof of the Templars' guilt. They were used to turn the public against the order and to put pressure on Pope Clement V, who was horrified by the brutal methods but powerless to stop them. The Pope, a weak man in the shadow of a powerful king, tried to launch his own investigation, but Philip's control was absolute. The tragedy of the Templar confessions is not just a story of torture. It's a story of how a powerful institution can be destroyed from within. The Templars, who had once been the most trusted of all organizations, were now seen as a conspiracy of heretics. The confessions, no matter how false, gave a veneer of legitimacy to a royal act of greed. The Templars' fall was a cautionary tale. In a world of absolute power, the truth is not what is real, but what a king wants it to be. The legacy of the Templar trials is a chilling reminder of the dangers of unchecked power and the ease with which a narrative can be constructed to serve an agenda. The whispered confessions, forced from a broken brotherhood, echo through the centuries, forever tying the Templars to a dark and mysterious past. The massive arrests and forced confessions of the Templars triggered a political earthquake in medieval Europe. But the chess game was not over. While King Philip IV had the Templars in his dungeons, he did not have the power to dissolve an order created and protected by the Church. The final authority lay with the man who wore the tiara, Pope Clement V. This chapter is not just a trial. It is a clash of titans, a conflict over power and sovereignty between Europe's most ambitious monarch and the leader of Christendom. Clement V, a weak pope and trapped in exile in Avignon, under the shadow of French influence, found himself in an impossible position. On one hand, his sacred duty was to protect the Order of the Temple, his right arm in the East. On the other, he faced the relentless pressure of Philip IV, who threatened him with a schism and the accusation of heresy against the papacy itself if he did not cooperate. Clement, horrified by the methods of torture and the clearly coerced confessions, tried to regain control of the process. The Pope ordered his own investigation, sending his legates to question the Templars, but Philip ensured that the papal interrogations would not take place. The king used his influence and power to manipulate the process, ensuring the trial was a farce. The trial of the Templars did not take place in a single location, but in a media and legal circus across Europe. Although Templars from other nations such as England, Germany, and Spain were put on trial, the forced confessions of their brothers in France were the only real evidence against them. In most of these countries, the Templars were acquitted as no evidence was found for the crimes they were accused of. But in France the outcome was already written. The decisive moment came at the Council of Vienne in 1312. Philip IV showed up with his army, a clear gesture that he would not take no for an answer. Cornered and fearing for the unity of the Church, Pope Clement V made a decision that would go down in history. Instead of acquitting the Templars or formally condemning them, he chose the most political path possible. Through the papal bull Vox in Excelso, the Pope suppressed the Order of the Temple, not for their guilt of heresy, but for their bad reputation and to avoid a greater scandal. The bull declared that the order was useless, and that its immense wealth and power had made it dangerous. The suppression of the order was a masterful blow by Philip. He achieved his goal of destroying the Templars without the Pope having to admit they were heretics. And in a twist of irony, the lands and properties of the Templars, which were supposedly to be handed over to the Order of the Hospital, the Knights Hospitaller, mostly remained in the hands of Philip IV, who claimed the vast expenses of the trial as compensation. The final verdict of the Council of Vienne left the order headless and without purpose, but not without an echo. The Pope had ceded to the secular power of a king, and this surrender marked a turning point in the history of the Church and state. The Order of the Temple, which had been the shield of the faith, became the victim of a power play. Its trial was not about heresy or innocence but about supremacy. The echo of this trial resonates to this day. Pope Clement V and King Philip IV demonstrated that accusations of heresy could be a political tool, a way to destroy enemies and seize their assets. The dissolution of the Templars by papal order put an end to their legal existence but not to their legend. The Council of Vienne had suppressed the Templars, but it had not delivered a final verdict on the fate of its leaders. For years, the Grand Master Jacques de Molay and the Preceptor of Normandy, Geoffroy de Charny, languished in a French dungeon, their fate held in a precarious balance between the will of a king and the crumbling authority of a pope. While the order had been legally dissolved, the final act of this tragedy had yet to be written. It was a play that demanded a public execution, a final sacrifice to justify the king's greed and the pope's weakness. On March 18, 1314, after more than 6 years of imprisonment, de Molay and de Charny were brought to a scaffold erected on the Isle aux Juifs, a small island on the Seine River in the heart of Paris. A large crowd had gathered, expecting the two men to reaffirm their confessions and face their sentence. The atmosphere was somber and tense. The king and his entourage watched from a distance, confident that their long-awaited victory was at hand. But what followed was a moment of extraordinary courage and defiance. As the judges read out the confessions, de Molay stood up, his aged body frail but his voice clear and resonant. He spoke not in a whisper, but with the authority of a man who had faced death on countless battlefields. He recanted his confession, declaring it a lie born of the unbearable pain of torture. He proclaimed the innocence of the Templars and the purity of their faith. He stated that the order was pure and that all the charges were false. Geoffroy de Charny followed suit, his voice echoing the Grand Master's words. They had been forced to lie to save their lives, and now they were choosing to die with the truth. This public recantation was a catastrophic blow to Philip IV's carefully constructed narrative. The king had planned a final, dignified confession, a perfect end to his conspiracy. Instead, he got an act of defiance that would resonate through history. The recantations were not just words, they were a direct challenge to his authority, a public unmasking of his treachery. Enraged, Philip immediately overruled the ecclesiastical court and ordered the two men to be burned at the stake. As the flames licked at his feet, Jacques de Molay, his eyes fixed on the distant walls of Notre Dame, uttered a final, powerful pronouncement that would become the most famous part of the Templar legend. According to contemporary chroniclers, he cursed his persecutors, summoning them to face divine judgment. He called upon Pope Clement V to meet him before God within 40 days, and King Philip IV to join him within a year and a day. The curse was not just a last act of vengeance, it was an act of faith. De Molay was certain that he and his order were innocent, and that their unjust execution would be avenged by God himself. Whether it was a coincidence or divine intervention, the curse came to pass with a terrifying swiftness. Pope Clement V, a man in ill health and burdened by the guilt of his actions, died a mere month after de Molay's execution, on April 20, 1314. His death, a combination of a painful illness and a sense of defeat, was seen by many as a direct fulfillment of the curse. the king's fate was even more chilling. Philip IV, a man in the prime of his life, died in a mysterious hunting accident on November 29, 1314, less than a year after de Molay's death. His death was sudden and unexpected, an eerie and dramatic fulfillment of the Grand Master's final prophecy. The death of the king and the pope, so close to the execution of de Molay, cemented the Templar curse in the minds of the people. It transformed the Templars from a heretical sect into a group of martyrs, men who died for the truth and whose sacrifice was divinely avenged. The last flame on the Isle aux Juifs did not extinguish the Templar legend. It forged it in fire, turning a tragic ending into a powerful, enduring myth. The Templars had lost their lives, but in their final moments, they had won the battle for their legacy. The Templars' fall was as sudden as it was brutal, leaving behind a power vacuum and a network of magnificent castles, vast lands, and a financial empire of staggering wealth. But as King Philip IV's men seized the Templar houses across France on that fateful Friday the 13th, a curious thing happened. The famous Templar treasure, the gold, the jewels, the priceless artifacts, was nowhere to be found. The vaults were empty. This mysterious disappearance gave birth to a legend that has captivated treasure hunters, historians, and occultists for centuries. Where did the Templar treasure go? The most common and plausible theory is that the treasure was simply an exaggeration. The Templars' wealth wasn't a single hoard of gold and silver but a decentralized network of assets, lands, properties, and debts owed to them. Their true wealth was in their financial system, their banking network, which could not be physically seized. After the order was dissolved, the kings who had been in debt to them simply annulled their debts, and their properties and assets were absorbed by the crown or, in some cases, transferred to the Hospitallers. The missing treasure was a myth created by the public imagination, a story to explain the order's sudden fall. But for a legend to take hold, it must have a tantalizing core of truth. The Templars, being a military and religious order, would have been custodians of precious relics and artifacts. It is widely believed that they may have found a significant treasure during their time in the Holy Land, perhaps during their 9 years of excavation under the Temple of Solomon. This treasure would not have been mere gold but something of much greater symbolic value: biblical artifacts, sacred scrolls, or even the Holy Grail itself. The fact that the Templars' power exploded after this period of excavation has led many to believe that they found something extraordinary. The most famous part of the legend is the story of the Templar fleet. On the night before the arrests, a fleet of 18 Templar ships was supposedly seen sailing from the port of La Rochelle, France, the order's main naval base. These ships, it is said, were laden with the order's most precious possessions. They sailed west into the Atlantic and vanished from the known world. This dramatic escape, if it happened, would explain the missing treasure and also connect the Templars to the early exploration of the Americas. This leads to a more speculative theory. The Templars, armed with their secret knowledge and their legendary wealth, established a new life across the Atlantic. This theory, popularized in recent decades, suggests that the Templars were the first to discover the Americas, long before Columbus. Their legacy can be found in a number of clues: the mysterious Newport Tower in Rhode Island, which some believe was a Templar outpost; the famous Oak Island Money Pit in Nova Scotia, a legendary treasure site where the Templars may have buried their wealth; and the presence of intricate carvings and symbols in certain ancient American sites that bear a striking resemblance to Templar imagery. Another, more mystical theory, is that the treasure wasn't a physical object at all but knowledge. The Templars, it is argued, were the custodians of a secret tradition, a Gnostic form of Christianity, or a hidden history of the early church. This treasure was a spiritual one, passed down through generations in a secret brotherhood that survived the Inquisition. The search for the Templar treasure, then, is not about finding gold but about uncovering a profound, hidden truth. The Templar treasure, in all its forms, remains an enduring mystery. It is a symbol of the order's hidden power and its abrupt demise. Whether it was a hoard of gold, a fleet of ships, a forgotten artifact, or a body of secret knowledge, the legend of the missing treasure ensures that the Templars will continue to be a source of fascination for generations to come. The unanswered question of its whereabouts is the ultimate testament to the order's ability to guard its secrets, even in death. The Templars' official demise left a vacuum, but their sudden disappearance fueled the theory of a secret survival. The legend posits that a hidden lineage of Templars continued the order's mission, passing down its wealth, knowledge, and rituals in a clandestine brotherhood. This belief has led to the most enduring Templar legacy of all: their supposed connection to other secret societies, most notably the Freemasons. The connection between the Templars and the Freemasons is a cornerstone of Masonic lore. Many Masonic traditions claim a direct line of descent from the Knights Templar, arguing that the order's fugitive members escaped the Inquisition and found refuge in countries like Scotland, where they continued to operate in secret. This theory suggests that the Templars, as master builders of castles and cathedrals, used the guilds of stonemasons as a cover. They infused the Masonic guilds with their own esoteric knowledge and rituals, transforming them from a simple trade union into a philosophical and spiritual fraternity. The Masonic degrees, particularly the higher ones, contain rituals and symbols that are said to be a direct continuation of Templar rites. But is this connection real, or is it a brilliant piece of historical fiction? Most mainstream historians are highly skeptical of a direct, unbroken link. The historical record shows that the modern form of Freemasonry emerged in the late 17th and early 18th centuries, long after the Templars' fall. The rituals, symbolism, and a direct Templar link were likely added later, as a way to give the burgeoning Masonic movement a more ancient, noble, and mysterious origin. It was a romantic narrative that appealed to the Enlightenment-era mind, a way to connect a modern fraternal order to a legendary medieval one. Yet, the idea persists because of striking similarities. The Masonic initiation ceremonies, which involve a symbolic death and rebirth, echo the secretive Templar receptions. Both orders use a series of secret passwords, handshakes, and allegorical symbols to identify members and convey hidden truths. The Templar cross and other symbols are frequently used in Masonic regalia. The story of the Templars' persecution and their unjust end resonates deeply with the Masonic ideal of a brotherhood of men seeking truth and fighting against tyranny. The link is more than just Freemasonry. Other societies, like the Rosicrucians and various modern orders that claim to be the heirs of the Templars, also draw on the same narrative. They believe that the Templars were not just military monks, but custodians of a secret, Gnostic form of Christianity, a lost gospel or a hidden lineage of Christ. This secret knowledge was the true treasure of the Templars, and it was preserved by these secret societies. This belief transforms the Templars from a failed military order into a successful spiritual one, a brotherhood that survived by going underground and preserving its truth for a time when it could be revealed. Whether they are the true heirs or simply spiritual descendants, the Freemasons and other secret societies have done more than any historical account to keep the Templar legend alive. They have provided a powerful, living narrative of survival and secrecy. The myth of the Templars as the originators of these hidden fraternities ensures that the order's legacy is not confined to the dust of history books but continues to thrive in a shadowy, secretive world of oaths, rituals, and ancient mysteries. The Templars may have been destroyed in the open, but their soul, it is believed, survived in the secret chambers of their spiritual heirs. The Templar story is not just told in manuscripts and trial records, it is written in stone. The castles, churches, and commanderies they built stand as silent witnesses to their power, their piety, and their unique place in history. Their architectural legacy is a testament to their immense wealth and their advanced military engineering, but it also contains a secret language of symbols and geometry that hints at a deeper, more esoteric purpose. The Templar castles in the Holy Land were masterpieces of military architecture. Fortresses like Château Pellerin on the coast of Acre were built to be impregnable, with massive concentric walls, moats, and sophisticated defenses. These castles were not just garrisons, they were operational hubs for their military campaigns and a visible symbol of their permanence in a hostile land. The design of these fortresses, with their clean lines and geometric precision, reflects a level of mathematical and engineering knowledge that was far ahead of its time. But the most intriguing part of their architectural legacy is in their churches. Unlike the grand, soaring Gothic cathedrals of Europe, Templar churches were often round or octagonal. The most famous example is the Temple Church in London. This unique design was not a random choice. It was a deliberate imitation of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, the site where Christ was buried and resurrected. By building their churches in this style, the Templars were creating a physical link to the Holy Land, a symbolic representation of their sacred mission. The round form also held a deeper, more mystical meaning, symbolizing perfection, eternity, and the journey of the soul. Templar churches and buildings are also filled with a language of subtle symbolism. The Red Cross, their most famous symbol, is etched into the stone, a constant reminder of their sacrifice and their divine mission. But other, more hidden symbols have led to speculation about their esoteric beliefs. The presence of green men, pre-Christian pagan figures, and intricate geometric patterns has led some to believe that the Templars incorporated secret knowledge into their architecture, a kind of sacred geometry that was passed down from the ancient master builders. The Templars, it is argued, were not just builders of stone, they were builders of a new hidden faith. The Templar legacy in stone is a story of dual purpose. Their castles were instruments of war, designed for defense and conquest. Their churches were places of worship, designed for prayer and devotion. But underneath the surface, a deeper narrative emerges, one of hidden knowledge, sacred geometry, and a unique spiritual quest. The Templars' buildings, far from being just physical structures, are a testament to their enduring mystery, a coded message in stone that continues to defy a simple explanation. They remind us that the Templars were not just warriors and bankers, but also keepers of a secret that they carved into the very foundations of their world. The legend of the lost Templar treasure, combined with the mystery of their disappearing fleet, has given rise to one of the most audacious and controversial theories of all, that the Templars were the first Europeans to set foot in the Americas, a full 200 years before Columbus. This theory suggests that the Templars, anticipating their persecution, sailed west with their treasure and their secrets, establishing a new outpost in the New World. The primary evidence for this claim is a fascinating mix of historical clues and archaeological oddities. The most famous of these is the Newport Tower in Rhode Island, a circular stone tower with no clear origin. While mainstream historians attribute it to a later colonial windmill, others argue that its unique architectural style, particularly its circular shape, is a clear sign of Templar influence. It is said to have been built by a group of Templars who had escaped to the New World, a final fortress for their hidden brotherhood. Another key piece of evidence is the Oak Island Money Pit in Nova Scotia. This is one of the world's most famous unsolved treasure hunts, a legendary site where countless expeditions have tried to unearth a rumored hidden treasure. According to some theories, this is where the Templars buried their most sacred treasure and artifacts, protecting it with a series of intricate booby traps. While no definitive Templar link has been proven, the legends surrounding the site have kept the theory alive for centuries. The theory of a Templar presence in the Americas is also supported by a series of intriguing symbolic and historical parallels. The Micmac Indians, a tribe from Nova Scotia, have a tribal flag that bears a striking resemblance to the Templar flag, with a red cross on a white background. Some scholars argue that this is a direct result of early contact with the Templars, who taught them their faith and shared their symbols. Another piece of evidence comes from the Sinclair family, a powerful Scottish noble family with a long-standing Templar connection. The Sinclairs, it is said, funded a secret expedition to the New World in the late 14th century, led by Henry Sinclair, an alleged descendant of the Templars. He is said to have explored the coast of North America, using Templar maps and knowledge. While these theories are compelling and full of intrigue, they remain on the fringes of historical scholarship. The evidence is largely circumstantial, and the direct links are difficult to prove. Mainstream historians argue that the Newport Tower and Oak Island are more likely to have been built in the colonial era, and that the Sinclair legend is a later fabrication. Nevertheless, the Templar in the Americas theory remains one of the most popular and enduring parts of the Templar legend. It provides a dramatic and satisfying answer to the question of what happened to the Templars and their treasure. It transforms their tragic ending into a great escape, a journey into a new world where they could continue their mission in secret, forever linked to the lands and mysteries of the West. It is the ultimate expression of the Templars' ability to survive in legend, if not in reality. Of all the relics and artifacts rumored to have been in the Templars' possession, none is more mysterious and controversial than the Shroud of Turin. This ancient linen cloth, said to bear the image of a crucified man, has been revered as the true burial cloth of Jesus Christ for centuries. The Templars' story, with its themes of secrecy, persecution, and hidden relics, is a perfect fit for the Shroud's own shadowy history. The historical timeline of the Shroud is filled with gaps and mysteries. Its first documented appearance in Europe was in the mid-14th century in France, a few decades after the Templars' downfall. Before that, its whereabouts are largely unknown. This creates a perfect window of opportunity for a compelling theory, that the Templars, in their search for sacred artifacts, had found the Shroud in Constantinople during the Fourth Crusade in 1204. They had then secretly brought it back to Europe, hiding it and venerating it in their most secret rituals. The theory suggests that the Templars' worship of a bearded idol, which they called Baphomet, was not a sign of heresy but a desperate attempt to conceal the Shroud. The Shroud, when folded, would have shown a bearded face, which could have been misinterpreted or deliberately misrepresented by their persecutors as an idol. The Templars, under torture, may have been forced to confess to worshipping a graven image, a charge they could not deny without revealing the Shroud's existence. The Templars' alleged ritual of denying Christ by spitting on a cross may have been a test of loyalty in a heretical sect that revered a different, more physical relic. The shroud's own mysterious properties also lend credence to this theory. The image on the cloth is not a painting but is believed by some to be a scorch mark created by a burst of energy. This has led to speculation that the Templars possessed secret knowledge of ancient energies or lost technologies. The shroud itself, then, would not have been just a relic but an object of immense scientific and spiritual power. However, the connection between the Templars and the shroud is highly speculative. The shroud's earliest known history in Europe is well documented, and it does not mention the Templars. The charges of heresy against the Templars, while likely coerced, were based on a wide range of accusations, not just the worship of an idol. Furthermore, radiocarbon dating tests in the late 1980s dated the cloth to the medieval period, a time well after the crucifixion of Christ, casting doubt on its authenticity and therefore its link to the Templars' search for biblical artifacts. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, the connection between the Templars and the Shroud of Turin remains a powerful part of their legend. It provides a plausible explanation for the Templars' sudden wealth, their secret rituals and their alleged heresies. It transforms the shroud from a mere relic into the ultimate Templar treasure, a tangible link to a secret society that was willing to die to protect its most sacred secret. The Templars' story, intertwined with the shrouds, becomes a narrative of divine protection and an enduring mystery that continues to captivate the imagination. The Templars' story is a labyrinth of history and myth, and perhaps the most provocative theory of all links them not just to a holy object, but to a holy bloodline. This legend, popularized in recent decades, suggests that the Templars were the guardians of a secret far more profound than a physical cup, the lineage of Jesus Christ himself. This theory posits that Christ did not die on the cross but survived, married Mary Magdalene and had children. This sacred bloodline, or sangreal, was then secretly brought to Europe and protected by a series of shadowy societies, with the Templars serving as its ultimate protectors. According to this legend, the Templars' 9 years of excavation under the Temple of Solomon were not a search for gold but a quest for the true documents of the early Christian Church. They are said to have found evidence of this lost bloodline, a truth that would have shattered the foundations of the Catholic Church. Their immense power and their absolute allegiance to the Pope were not just a result of their military prowess, but a necessary cover. They were not just the soldiers of God, they were the guardians of his family. The theory also attempts to explain the Templars' peculiar actions and their alleged heresies. The Templars' veneration of Mary Magdalene, who they are said to have held in higher esteem than the Virgin Mary, is seen as a sign of their devotion to her as the true matriarch of the holy bloodline. The accusations of heresy and the worship of a strange idol, Baphomet, are reinterpreted as misinterpretations of their secret veneration of this sacred bloodline. The Grail was not a cup but the lineage itself, the sangreal or royal blood. This narrative turns the Templars' downfall into a desperate attempt by the Church to eliminate a threat to its authority. King Philip IV and Pope Clement V, it is argued, were not just motivated by greed but by a desire to silence a truth that would expose the Catholic Church as a lie. The suppression of the Templars was an act of a desperate institution trying to protect its power. While this theory is compelling, it is widely considered a work of modern fiction, a romanticization of history. There is no historical evidence to support the survival of Jesus or the existence of a holy bloodline. The historical record shows that the Templars were a devoted and pious order, and their loyalty to the Catholic Church was never in doubt. The charges of heresy were almost certainly fabricated to serve a political agenda. The Templars' devotion to Mary Magdalene, if it existed, was likely a form of spiritual piety and not a sign of a secret, heretical belief. Nevertheless, the theory of the Holy Bloodline has done more than any other to keep the Templar legend alive in the popular imagination. It provides a thrilling and dramatic explanation for their rise and fall, turning them into the ultimate guardians of a forbidden truth. It transforms their history from a simple story of a military order into a quest for a profound and revolutionary secret. The Templars in this version of the story were not defeated. They simply went underground and their sacred bloodline, it is believed, continues to this day. The official history of the Templars ends in the flames of the pyre and the pages of a papal bull, but the legend of their survival is one of the most enduring parts of their story. The idea that a powerful, wealthy, and secretive organization could simply vanish overnight is hard to believe. So where did they go? The answer, according to legend, is that they didn't go away at all. They simply went underground. The most plausible theory of Templar survival is that they were absorbed into other orders. In Portugal, King Dinis, a Templar sympathizer, refused to persecute the order. Instead, he simply renamed it the Order of Christ and transferred all its members and assets. The Knights of the Order of Christ wore the distinctive Templar cross, and they continued their seafaring traditions. Decades later, a Grand Master of the Order of Christ, a man named Henry the Navigator, would lead the Portuguese Age of Discovery, an era of exploration that would change the world forever. The theory suggests that the Templars' seafaring knowledge, their secret maps, and their legendary wealth were passed down to this new order, allowing them to lead the exploration of the New World. In Scotland, the story is even more intriguing. Scotland at the time was excommunicated by the Pope for supporting Robert the Bruce in his war for independence against England. This meant that the Pope's order to arrest the Templars had no legal standing in the country. According to legend, a number of Templar knights fled to Scotland and fought alongside Robert the Bruce at the Battle of Bannockburn in 1314. The arrival of these hardened warriors, with their fearsome charge, is said to have turned the tide of the battle in Scotland's favor. In exchange for their help, the Templars were given a safe haven, where they continued to operate in secret, their presence protected by the Scottish crown. The survival theory also points to a number of noble families who had close ties to the Templars and who refused to participate in their persecution. These families are said to have harbored the fugitive Templars, allowing them to continue their work in secret. The Templars, it is said, simply melted into the fabric of society, their wealth and knowledge passed down through generations in a hidden lineage of initiates. This idea of a hidden Templar survival is a powerful one. It transforms the Templars from a tragic footnote in history into a hidden hand that guided the course of events for centuries. It gives them an air of mystery and power, suggesting that they were not defeated, but simply transformed. The Templars in this narrative are not a relic of the past. They are a living, breathing part of our present, a secret society that continues to operate in the shadows. The echo of their survival ensures that the Templar legend will never truly die. The echoes of the Templar legend, from the lost treasure to the secret societies, have given rise to a modern phenomenon, a renaissance of the Templar order. Today, dozens of organizations around the world claim to be the direct descendants or spiritual heirs of the original Knights Templar. These groups, which range from small, secretive fraternities to large international organizations, are a testament to the enduring power of the Templar myth. These modern Templar orders, such as the Ordo Supremus Militaris Templi Hierosolymitani, OSMH, or the Sovereign Military Order of the Temple of Jerusalem, share a number of characteristics with their medieval predecessors. They are often hierarchical, with members taking oaths of loyalty and obedience. They use the same symbols, particularly the red cross on a white background, and their rituals are often based on the medieval Templar model. But their mission is fundamentally different. They are not a military order sworn to fight in the Holy Land. Their mission is a modern one: to promote chivalry, to engage in humanitarian work, to preserve Christian values, and to keep the Templar legacy alive. The modern Templars see themselves as a spiritual brotherhood, a continuation of the philosophical and mystical side of the original order. They believe that they are the custodians of a secret truth, a hidden history that was passed down through the centuries. They do not claim to have a hidden treasury of gold, but they do believe that they are the keepers of a treasure of knowledge, a spiritual legacy that was too dangerous to be revealed in the Middle Ages. The resurgence of the Templars is not limited to these formal organizations. The Templar legend has also become a powerful force in popular culture. From video games to films and novels, the Templars are often portrayed as a powerful, shadowy organization, a secret society that has survived to the present day and that continues to manipulate world events. This portrayal, while not historically accurate, taps into our fascination with hidden truths and our desire for a secret world operating just beyond our grasp. The Templars in this context are not just a part of history, they are a part of our modern mythology. The modern Templars in all their forms are a powerful testament to the enduring appeal of the medieval order. They are a reflection of our desire for a world of chivalry, honor, and purpose. They prove that the Templar legend is not a dusty old story but a living, breathing myth that continues to inspire and fascinate. The Templars may have been destroyed in the 14th century, but their name, their symbols, and their spirit have been resurrected in a new, modern form, ensuring that their legacy will continue for centuries to come. We have journeyed through the rise and fall of the Knights Templar, a story of an oath of poverty that became an empire of wealth, a spiritual mission that became a political crusade, and a heroic brotherhood that became the victim of a brutal conspiracy. We have explored the legends that have sprung from their ashes, the lost treasure, the Holy Grail, the secret societies, and the curses that sealed their fate. But what is the true legacy of the Templars? What is the final echo that they have left on our world? The Templars' legacy is not in the castles that now stand in ruin, or in the gold that was never found. Their true legacy is a profound paradox. They were a brotherhood of monk warriors who embodied the contradictions of their time. They were devoutly religious, yet they were accused of the gravest heresies. They were a symbol of humility and poverty, yet they amassed a fortune that was the envy of kings. They were the champions of the faith, yet they were ultimately destroyed by the very institutions they had sworn to protect. The Templar story is a cautionary tale about the corrupting influence of power, the dangers of unchecked ambition, and the fragility of truth in the face of political treachery. It is a story that reminds us that the line between a hero and a heretic can be as thin as the edge of a sword, and that a powerful narrative, even if it is a lie, can be more potent than the truth. But the Templars' legacy is also a testament to the enduring power of a legend. Their story, with all its mystery and intrigue, has captured the imagination of generations. It has inspired novelists, filmmakers, and historians. It has given rise to a global phenomenon of secret societies, treasure hunts, and spiritual quests. The Templars, through their tragic end, have achieved a kind of immortality. They are no longer a simple historical footnote but a living, breathing part of our modern mythology. Their final echo is not a whisper but a roar. It is the sound of a sword hitting a shield, a monk's prayer in a stone chapel, a secret passed down through generations. It is the sound of a legend that refuses to die, a story that will continue to be told as long as we are fascinated by courage, mystery, and the enduring power of a secret. The Templars may have been destroyed, but their legacy, like the echoes of an ancient oath, will resonate forever.